food, right? That's really great. Also today we prepared for all of you special sermon, inviting our brother and our elder brother, Reverend Gunnard Johnston. Actually, I met him the first time 3 years ago, right? There was 120 days workshop in Guru. I remember at that time, he was really passionate to lead all Western brothers and sisters. But recently I met him again here in Chungboku, and then I could listen to about his opinion, his activity, his sincere mind to do something for God's purpose. And then I decided to invite him one day, actually it's 2 days, for our Sunday service. So please listen carefully about his life, his activity, his passion, his heart for God and to parents. And I hope this time, today, this sermon time can be really, really inspired and can touch all of your hearts deeply. Okay? Thank you. Let's give big our applause.
Well, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
So nice to see so many of you here on this beautiful day. I'm still getting over this testimony that we just heard. Wow, that was this girl has done quite a few things in her life. Let's give another hand. Well, I remember seeing her many, many years ago, and I was always wondering who she was, because I never got to know her personally. But I would see her here and there in New York, usually, and I was always curious as to who she was. Well, she just told us. Wow, such a powerhouse. Are you inspired by her?
Yes.
Huh? You want to be like that?
Yes.
You can do it.
I do.
Thank you. Okay, well, what about me? What have I got to say? Let me introduce myself a little bit. You heard something in the beginning, but I'd like to tell you something between the lines. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Gunnard Zachary Johnston, Jr. I was born shortly after World War II in 1947 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My father was a second-generation American. His parents came to America. His grandfather came from Sweden, and grandmother came from France. My mother's parents had also come to America. Her mother was from England, and her father was from Scotland. So I'm third-generation American. Not so long there. Not so long. Okay? I've got many friends back in America that tell me about their ancestors going back 12 or 13 generations. And I'm sitting there saying, wow, you've been here a long time. I just got here. Anyway, what's important is not how long you're in some place, but what you do when you're there. And my parents were faithful Christians. From my earliest time, I remember we were going to church every Sunday, never missed a single Sunday. And my father was, his work was as an electrical engineer, which was, similar to what your father studied when he was in school. But my father actually lived a whole career as an electrical engineer. In fact, he worked on the Apollo space program that put the first men on the moon back in 1969. So that was a highlight of his life. And my mother was very active in interfaith activities and she was kind of in the leadership of what was our city interfaith Church United hall. It was called Church United, and it included not only churches, but the Jewish synagogues and Catholics and the Protestants and all the different religious groups in the city. She was very active in that. I grew up near Boston, Massachusetts, where the Puritan Pilgrim Fathers had come to America in 1620. And so in my youth, I learned a lot about these earliest Christian Americans, their sacrifices and their accomplishments to build a new nation directly under God's guidance. I was very fortunate to hear and to visit the places where history had been made in America. It was a great blessing for me. Then, from my earliest time, when I was 8, 9 years old, I was very interested in sports. In fact, sports were my life. I could play ice hockey when it was 20 degrees below zero, and then later in high school I received all-star or all-state recognition. I played American football from my childhood all through high school and college, and I was all-state in high school there as well. I painted my basketball backboard. I painted it myself 5 times because I wanted to make sure it never, it never got rusty or rotten. I made my own hockey sticks. I froze the backyard so I could ice skate in it. I did all kinds of stuff. I did all of these things without thinking about food or water or resting or anything else. I could just go all day long without thinking about anything else. Sports was my life when I was very young. Also in my youth and teenage years, I liked watching TV at night, especially the heroes like Superman and Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone. There were series on the TV when I was very young, which told the stories of these historical people. Well, Superman's not historical, but Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone are. And also there was a program about the United States Military Academy, West Point. I don't know if Eric remembers that, maybe it was before your day, but West Point and Annapolis both had, first it was West Point, and of course the Navy can't let the Army get away with anything, so they had to have their program. But I remember West Point, and this was an excellent program showing what the cadets, the students at this military academy had to go through. It was the most vigorous training. Now I know there's some Marines around here. Where's Justin Harding today? And the Marines won't hear of this, but anyway, the Army, West Point, does have very, very vigorous training. In fact, Father said he wanted to make UTS, Unification Seminary, become the West Point of our members, the spiritual West Point. That's how strict, vigorous the training is for those students. Anyway, I loved this TV program. I never missed a single one. And I decided when I was about 13 years old, I wanted to go to West Point. Well, that was then. But later, as the years went on, a few more years later, I learned about other universities, and especially about the Ivy League, which was so respected, and everybody looked up to it. So I thought, well, maybe I'll try to go to an Ivy League school. So I applied to 5, and I was accepted to all 5, and I decided to go to Dartmouth College. And at Dartmouth, I majored in political science and participated in Army ROTC, which was kind of a compromise between regular college and West Point. So I did a little of both. However, it was during my college years that I started to abandon my church attendance and also my regular practice of faith. This is the key point. I started to forget about it. In fact, I never attended. I went to church like once my freshman year, and then once my senior year, and that was about it. I completely forgot it, completely left it out. And instead of going to church and practicing my faith in a subjective manner, I just focused on having fun. I just wanted to have fun. Everybody was having fun. Drinking and playing cards and all kinds of stuff. So that's what I did. I got into just having fun, living a life of having fun. which turned out to be actually living a life of decadence. Without realizing it at the time, I and many of my college associates were slowly descending into hell. And, there's many stories about this. I recommend looking at the movie or the story of Pinocchio. Even Pinocchio, for children, you can learn a lot from that story. True Father first visited America in 1965. And as he stood at Fifth Avenue at the Empire State Building, tears began to pour from Father's eyes as he felt in his heart that God was leaving America. And it was during my college years, in these mid to late 60s, that Satan was mounting an all-out attack on the youth of America through the promotion of free sex, drugs, bad rock and roll, drinking, and so forth. Satan created the hippie movement, which was completely possessed by just having pleasure. Just live for the moment. Enjoy yourself. Hey, everything is free. Just enjoy life. Don't worry about anything else. Have fun. All the time. Have fun. But what it really did was it turned people away from God. And it led people to become self-centered fools. Fools. And then it killed people's souls. Father talks and he says, what is the end of a hippie's life? All by himself. And many times committing suicide. Many of the hippie leaders of the 60s and 70s ended up committing suicide. Abbie Hoffman. I bought his books when I was young. I bought his books. I read his books. Leader of the hippie movement. He ended up committing suicide. So, although I joined the Army after I graduated from college, I joined as an officer. I was commissioned as an officer. I was already under the domination of selfish and self-centered habits. And I was all but forgetting about the future of my nation and the world. After only 1 year of active duty in the military, I even stupidly resigned my commission as an officer in the Army. From then, I quickly descended into hell, reaching the rock bottom just a few months later, one night, when I went to visit an acquaintance who was still in the Army. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed and I was all alone, I came face to face with Satan in a spiritual vision. He was sitting on a big barrel, and he was laughing at me, mocking me, telling me he had defeated me. And I was powerless. There was nothing I could say to him. It was the most miserable experience of my entire life. And I was only 23. I felt like I was 123. I felt like I had been through a washing machine for a 12-hour cycle, beaten to a pulp. Satan was laughing at me and ridiculing me as one who had fallen for his temptations. I felt so low and hopeless, it's almost beyond description. Like I had separated myself from everything that I had loved, everyone and everything. God, Jesus, my family, my friends, everything. I had denied them all, and now I was at the rock bottom of hell. This was in late 1971, just as True Father was about to arrive in America. Just around the same time, when Father arrived in America in 1971, I went through this experience. Satan was trying to kill me. For the next few years, I had to literally fight with Satan every day just to stay alive. I had lost several friends who had died in the Vietnam War, and I often thought, every day I was thinking, that I had no right to live since they had died and they were much more patriotic than I was. What right did I have to live when they're dead? I fought with this every single day. It was a desperate struggle. And then, one day, while I was out in the countryside, I was working on an apple farm. And it was a beautiful autumn, and I was by myself. And for about 2 weeks, I had been praying to Jesus. Finally, I became so desperate. I began to pray to Jesus and ask, what should I do with my life? I said, Jesus, you are the greatest man in history, and you died at a young age, only 33. Is that what I should do? I wasn't 33 yet. I was about 25 years old. But I said, I'm ready at 25. If you want me to do that, I'll do it. I'll die. But I had to get an answer. I was praying desperately. You can imagine. Life and death. It's a big decision, right? So before I died, I wanted to get some confirmation. So I prayed desperately. You know? And it was for 2 weeks. And finally, I was in tears. I had to get an answer. And finally, Jesus came to me, and this peaceful feeling came over me. And this voice came to me and said, no, you don't have to die. And at that moment, a huge weight, like something I had been carrying for years and years, like the weight of the world, was just lifted off my shoulders, lifted off my heart. I was totally liberated. I still did not know what I should do with the rest of my life, but I knew one thing, and that was I didn't have to die. I should not die. I should stay alive, and I should push on, keep going forward. Finally, a couple of years later, in the springtime of 1975, I woke up one day and I decided to go to New York City. I just woke up and this powerful feeling came to me, this powerful thought, you must go to New York City. I did not know where I was going or what I was going to do, but I just knew I had to go to New York City. I went home, I told my mother, and my mother asked me, well, what are you going there for? What are you looking for in New York? And I told her, I don't know what I'm looking for. But if it doesn't exist in New York City, it doesn't exist at all. That's what I thought. I knew one thing, and that was I had to go to New York. So I drove down that day, and I arrived in Manhattan late that afternoon, and I just decided at some point I was going to turn left. I had to go. I was along the Hudson River. I was on my right, so I wasn't going to turn right. I had to turn left. So, okay, I'll turn left here. And as I turned left, I found out I was on 34th Street. So I kept driving a little way, and then I got to 9th Avenue, and there was a YMCA, and my father had always told me, if you need a place to stay, the YMCA is not so bad. It's cheap, and it's clean, and da-da-da. Well, he didn't know about New York, but that was before his time. So I parked my car, and I got a room, and yet, as soon as I got established, and I went out, Satan was again coming after me, clawing at me, and he took me to some very low and seedy places around Times Square. But I somehow managed to keep myself from falling again into his temptations until I finally, after some months actually, I finally met my spiritual mother. A Japanese lady, a little older than me, and it was on 5th Avenue, not far from where True Father had prayed 10 years earlier. After several days of receiving many phone calls and postcards inviting me to attend the lecture, I finally walked all the way up to the Bronx, about 6-7 miles. That's about 10-12 kilometers from where I was living in Manhattan, to hear my first lecture from somebody named Tyler Hendricks. Perhaps some of you know him. Over the next week, I returned for 2 more lectures, and after the 3rd one, my Japanese spiritual mother was waiting for me with a membership application form to join the Unification Church. At this point, my insides were shaking because I knew I had to sign this membership form. But I also knew that when I did sign it, I would have to change my life. I would have to change my life. There was nothing my spiritual mother, nothing that Tyler Hendricks, nothing that all the other wonderful brothers and sisters could do for me. I had to do it myself. They could love me, but they can't change me. I have to change me. Right? We all have to change ourselves. So, I attended immediately a 3-day workshop that evening. And then that flipped over the next day. After the 3-day, I went to a 7-day. And at the end of the 7-day, the workshop director showed us a movie. And this was about True Parents, True Fathers tour around America in 1974. And the conclusion is True Father's speech at Madison Square Garden. How many people have seen the Madison Square Garden speech? How many people have seen it? How many people were there at Madison Square Garden? Were you there, Eddie? God bless you. The Madison Square Garden speech was a turning point in my life. It made it very clear. I was receiving much love from my brothers and sisters in the workshops, but I had not met True Father yet. I didn't know about him, really. They didn't talk about Father in those days. They were witnessing to the principle, not so much to Father in the beginning. I saw one little tiny picture of Father in one of the centers, and that was it. Anyway, Father was in the movie. And as you know in that movie, or if you don't know, Father absolutely is standing up as if he were representing Jesus in the flesh. Father expressed what Jesus went through, going on the cross, and the pain that he should never have had to suffer, as we all know. But it was powerful, the way Father expressed it. You have to see that movie. You have to see that speech that Father gave to understand what I mean. It was really a turning point for so many people. Not only me, I'm sure. Anyway, the very next day was Children's Day, 1975. So we all went up to Belvedere International. Do we have some photos?
Yes.
By the way? You have some photos for me? Hello?
Here?
Anyway, I didn't bring so many photos. I'm going to hire Sarah next time to prepare my yeah. So Father, this is how Father looked in those days. You can continue the next couple of pictures, if you would please. This is from one publication that came out around 1975. And then the next picture. This is Father's this is Father at the 1974 Day of All Things. He and Mother got up on the stage and they were singing. So that was about a year before I joined. And then the next picture. Father was very young, very powerful. This is Father speaking at Belvedere, the training center. This training center would every single Sunday be filled with people, overfilled. There were tents when it was raining out. They'd put tents in the back. Hundreds of people would come. This training center was actually a car garage. It was a garage for parking 3 or 4 cars. In this estate, this beautiful estate, the Belvedere estate was built for multi-millionaires. And this beautiful garage that had a revolving floor to move the cars around and everything. This was where Father would speak every Sunday. Next picture. This is a book that came out in 1975 by one professor named Frederick Sontag. And it was kind of, you know, Father asked us one day, in 1977, what we thought of the book, and I said, well, it was objective. Father said, objective? What do you mean, objective? I said, well, you know, he doesn't say pro or con, he just kind of lays out the facts. And Father said, is that good enough? I said, well, no. Okay, next picture. please. Okay, this is Belvedere, the front of Belvedere. As you drive in, or if you happen to be in a car, this is where you arrive, the front. And then the training center is the garage down the hill from the main building. Okay, let me go back to my little talk. So, we arrived for Children's Day 1975 at Belvedere, at the back of this building. It's a wide open. One more picture, please. Yeah, there's the back of the building. You can see the big area there behind the building. And that is where Father spoke. There was a stage set up, a small stage about this high, right behind the building, and there were about at least 1,000, maybe 2,000 people. That's a big area that you're looking at. About 1,000 or 2,000 people were gathered there for Children's Day. It was a beautiful day. It was an autumn day. The sun was shining. It was warm. There were apple trees around us. Thank you very much. And so this is where Father began to speak. Now, let me tell you what happened when Father was speaking, because this also was a big change in my life. As Father was speaking to us, he was preparing us for the Yankee Stadium and Washington Monument campaigns, which were to come in just a few more months, in 1976. And as he was speaking, Father, in his own way, as you know him, was roaring like a lion, and then, speaking very gently sometimes to the sisters in front, but then roaring again. He was really roaring on this day. And I had never in my life seen anybody in person who spoke with such conviction or intense burning focus on one goal. That goal, to bring victory for God in America. So as True Father was speaking, my spiritual senses opened up. And what I saw was from Father's eyes a light, like a laser beam. Wherever Father looked, bang, a laser beam. He looked over here, bang, a laser beam. He looked over there, bang, a laser beam. If you were in front of Father and he looked at you, he could see right through you, right through your head, right through everything. He could see your ancestors, he could see everything about you. It was very powerful. And when he looked at me, I was destroyed. After about 30 minutes, I got this incredible headache, something I'd never had before in my life. It felt like my head was going to blow up. It was just an incredible headache. And finally, I had to get out of there, and I went down to the training center and used the restroom. And when I came back, my headache was gone. It was total relief. But that's how Father could speak, and that's how he was speaking, and that's how I sensed him on this particular day. I was spiritually open at that time, and I could see and feel what Father was doing. And when he looked at me, it was like Muhammad Ali giving me a punch. You know Muhammad Ali, right? Everybody knows Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest boxers in history. When he hit you, you felt it. Well, that's how it felt. That's how I imagine Muhammad Ali's punches felt when I met Father. Okay, so Father spoke for several hours. He was teaching us in detail about America's purpose from God's point of view. That America was created from the faithful and courageous Puritan Pilgrim forefathers who were led by their dedication to create a new world absolutely centered on God. A nation that would represent all the peoples of the world. You know, you go to America, you see every type of person. Oriental, African, white, black, yellow, brown, whatever. A lot of new colors that have been invented ever since, too. Yeah, they've got all kinds there. So, what Father was saying is that all these divergent peoples have to become one. One. You know, and there's a motto in America. It's called E pluribus unum. It's Latin. It means out of many, one. E pluribus, out of many, unum, one. So that's what America's about. So Father was telling us, yes, that's what America's about, but it's not just for America. This America that is united under God is for the sake of the world. America has to live for the sake of the world. And in particular, America's particular mission is to live for the sake of Korea and Japan, to be the father and mother nations to unify the world with God's heart. Aju?
Aju.
So, after Father spoke, we had a break for lunch, and this was my first personal taste of Father's material generosity and love. True parents had ordered a huge truck full of hamburgers and French fries and drinks from McDonald's. A big truck. And
Really?
everybody there could have 2 Big Macs. Everybody could have 2 Big Macs. It was huge, gigantic. I never saw anything like it. And then, after we had eaten all these hamburgers, fries, drinks, and everything, then another truck came in, and this one was filled with big tubs of ice cream. This high, and they were scooping out the ice cream, and we got big bowls, completely filled up with ice cream. Amazing. So, that was my first taste of Father's love,
by the Messiah.
physical love, material love.
Yeah.
You know, we read in Father's autobiography, food is love, food is love. Well, I learned it very quickly, a long time ago. Food is love. So Father fed us, and then afterwards, at this point, I was exhausted. I had to take a rest. So there was a little break, and everybody was eating lunch, and then there's a little free time after lunch. And so I just took a little rest. You know, I just laid down on the grass, and my spiritual mother was watching over me. You know, and then there were some activities in the afternoon, like there was a race, a running race. Mr. Sudo went out and fell down, broke his arm. And you remember that, right? And there were other activities. There was a scavenger hunt, and my spiritual mother went out and found these hidden things, and she ended up making a lot of money because these things were all little tokens that you could get money. Father gave money as a prize. And then there were lecture contests, Divine Principle Lecture, Unification Thought, and VOC, Victory Over Communism. Three types of lectures, right? So I signed up, you know, I've been through 3-day, 7-day, 21-day workshop. I knew Divine Principle, man. I'm going to be in the lecture contest. Don't you know? I know Divine Principle. So I signed up, and I get up there, and people like, I don't know, Tom Ward and Jim Bachman and all these other, I mean, they're just rattling off Divine Principle like it was, you know, like they're reading it out of a book. And I'm struggling to think, you know, the purpose of creation is, anyway. So, anyway, I found out real quick that I was in over my head, but it was a good experience, you know, to learn something, even to be defeated, then you learn something from it, right? So, then when evening came, it wasn't over, because then there was entertainment, there was singing, there was dancing. It was quite simple in those days. And then finally, True Parents got up on stage, and they sang. They sang Arirang and O Maya. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful day. Then later, Father would speak, and one of the things that he was saying in those days was, I have come to America in the role of a fireman, a firefighter. America is burning in flames. Family breakdowns, immorality, free sex, drugs, destroying the country. And I have come to put out this fire. So Father explained his role to America like this. The other thing he said was, I am a doctor. America is sick. America has a disease. It's ill. It's suffering with sickness. Who can cure this disease? Nobody was curing that disease. And I know it. I'm an American. I know that there was nobody healing the sickness of America in those days. No church, no bishop, no archbishop, no pope, no politician, no professor. Oh, the great Ivy League. Oh, it's the most respected place in the world. Everybody wants to go to the Ivy League. I've been in here in Korea for 3 years, and everybody wants to go to Harvard. Everybody wants to go to Berkeley. Everybody wants to go to Yale. I'm telling you, those people do not have the answers. I went to Dartmouth. I went to the same level as Harvard. They do not have the answers. In fact, they have the wrong solutions. They are all seduced, most of them, not all of them, but most of them, 90% of them, 95% of them, are seduced by the left-wing, materialistic viewpoint of life. Really super Cain type view of life. I'm not proud of it, you know. It's not something that makes me happy to say. You know, this is the Ivy League. It's supposed to be the standard for not only America, but for the whole world. Many Koreans go running off to Harvard and they get destroyed in their minds. They get their brains turned upside down by the wrong teachings. Pro-homosexual? What is that? Pro-Barack Obama? What's he doing? I'm sorry. He's not doing a very good job. There are more blacks unemployed today than before Barack Obama took office. He can't blame it on the Republicans. He's been there for 5 years. Come on. He should have done something about it. So there are a lot of problems in America, and they're not getting solved. Father said, I am the doctor to solve these problems. So, after I attended the Children's Day, then immediately I went out on MFT. So, after being on MFT for just a few weeks, Father called us all to meet with him at UTS. And this is where, this is a seminary that Father had just started. And he asked us, why are you on MFT? What are you doing on MFT? So one sister was sitting in the front, she said, for God, for God. And Father said, no! Not for God. You are there for yourself. You are there to remove your fallen nature. This is your chance. I'm giving you a chance. I'm training you how to remove your fallen nature. If you are fallen, selfish, arrogant, proud of yourself, can you be nice to people and win their love, win their heart, and give a donation? Can you do it if you're proud and arrogant and selfish? No, you can't. Believe me. You have to be completely humble. You have to be completely for the sake of that person in order for them to give you their money. Right? They're not going to give you money if you're a jerk. You've got to be nice. So Father said, that's your training. That's what I'm training you to do. Become nice. Not nice in a soft way, not nice in a stupid way, but nice in a strong way, nice in a good way. Anyway, so back on the MFT trail myself, I realized, yes, I have a lot of fallen nature. And I went through ups and downs every day, ups and downs. Anybody understand that? Anybody been doing that? You understand that? Ups and downs. I think everybody understands. We have good days and we have bad days. We have good times of the day, bad times of the day, right? So what do we learn from all of this? What's wrong with me? What's my problem? Why do I feel so good 1 minute, or 1 hour, or 1 day, and the next day, or the next hour, or the next minute, I'm down in the pits of hell? What's going on here? My fallen nature. It's my problem. It's not your problem. It's not other people's problem. It's my problem. How do I solve my problem? That's the question. And MFT gave us the chance to learn it. That was the blessing. How to keep a loving heart. I realized finally, it took me a year, but I finally realized if I keep an absolutely loving heart, no matter what people say to me, no matter what they do to me, spit on me, kick me out, swear at me, no matter what, or give me a big blessing. Maybe they give me $50. No matter what they do to me, good or bad, I have to keep a constant heart. Love consistently, constantly, unchangingly, then I'm in a good place. If I love only those who love me, that's nothing. Jesus said, even the tax collectors love those who give them the money. It's the people that don't give you, it's the people that attack you. It's your enemies. If you can love those, then you have the victory. Then you have the victory. Crown of glory. So, next we had this Yankee Stadium campaign, and Yankee Stadium came on June the 1st, 1976. We prepared for many months, fundraising, and finally the day came. It was held in New York's Bronx, where I had joined the church actually. This was an intense day. Yankee Stadium had basically two levels. The lower level, and then there was a mezzanine level above, like a balcony. And the lower level was mostly church members and family and friends, invited guests. The upper level was for other people that were invited to come but were not connected to the church. And most of them were actually enemies of the church. There were communists and other leftists. They brought stink bombs. They confiscated like 20 weapons at the gates. People were checked before they came into the stadium. This is back in the early days. Today in America you get checked everywhere by the metal detectors. They found about 20 weapons, knives and guns. I'm talking about knives and guns were stocked at the front at the gates. Because communists had come to destroy Father's event, Father's speech. So this was all going on, and the rowdiness was starting, and then suddenly the rains came. Suddenly this enormous storm blew in, and winds were blowing everything everywhere, and the rain was just pouring down. And this went on for about 40 minutes. And finally the members, we all got up and were singing, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." We kept singing it and singing it. We were demanding to heaven, "Stop the rain, stop the rain. Father has to speak. Stop this rain." So we were singing, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy." Over and over and over again, in the rain and pouring down. It was very amazing. And then suddenly it stopped. Just as quickly as it came, it suddenly stopped. The sky became clear. They fixed everything. They prepared everything. And Father came out and he gave a tremendous speech, a fantastic speech. I urge you all to revisit that speech. Look at copies, videos of this, and re-enjoy that incredibly historical speech that Father gave us. So, Washington Monument came next, and we got word officially, we got permission to have Washington Monument rally just 40 days before the event, which was on September 18th. A few days ago was the anniversary of the Washington Monument rally and the Madison Square Garden rally too, and some other things that I can't remember offhand. So we were on MFT still. I was on MFT. We were busy doing our task. We hoped would bring a victory. So on the day of the event, all the MFT members were given responsibility to bring like 5 or 10 buses. So they gave me a place in Baltimore, Maryland, and they said, okay, at 12 o'clock there's going to be 5 buses. And at 12:15 we should start going down to Washington. So I got there at 11:30 and I'm waiting around and there's no people. There's nobody waiting. There's no buses. I said, well, you know, I have faith. It's all going to happen. So finally, at about 12 o'clock, the buses finally arrived. We're supposed to leave in 15 minutes, and there's no people. There's nobody. I'm starting to get worried, you know. And so waiting, 12:10. Finally, at about 12:11, about 4 minutes before we're supposed to leave, suddenly, I don't know where they came from. All these people appeared. I literally don't know where they came from. It was like the ground opened up and these people popped up. You know, about 200 people. We had buses, 5 buses, about 40 people on each bus. So what's that? About 200 people, right? But we had more than that. We had about 250 people. We had all kinds of people trying to get on the buses. They were showing me these pieces of paper. They said, this is a ticket, this is a ticket. A lot of teenage guys were trying to tell me, this is a ticket, some piece of paper. What's that? That's not a ticket. They wanted to go. They really wanted to go. Unfortunately, there just wasn't enough bus space for them. I felt sorry. My wife, who's here today, and my son is here, my wife was in Philadelphia, and she was also responsible, same as me, to bring some bus loads down to Washington. And they, in Philadelphia, rented every single bus in the city. Every single school bus, every city bus, every cross-country bus, every bus that was not being used was rented. And they still didn't have enough. There were still people. They were getting angry. They were saying, why can't I go? Why can't I go? Lots and lots of people wanted to go. When we got to Washington, there were over 8,000 buses parked. It was like a city of buses. That wasn't even Washington Monument. That was like half a mile away. It was like a kilometer away. And these buses were parked. And then we had to walk 1 kilometer to get to Washington Monument area. And the crowds were just starting. You know, we got there in the early afternoon, so the crowds were just starting to arrive. And then about 1 hour before the event was supposed to start, I went around and I asked some policemen who were there, you know, doing their job. I asked 2 policemen who were walking. One was over here and another one was 100 meters away. I said, how many people are here today? How many do you see? How many do you estimate? And they all said, one said 300,000, another one said about 310,000, and then I found a park ranger. He was on a horse, and I asked him, how many do you think are here? He said about 340,000, 330,000, something like that. So they all said more than 300,000. That you can see also. I wish I had a picture of Washington Monument. It's an ocean of people. Ocean of people. When we arrived, okay, I already talked about that. After some years, after reflecting on the Washington Monument and Yankee Stadium rallies, I was trying over those years to understand the deeper significance. And I realized that Father at that time was actually fulfilling the role of John the Baptist. He was out preaching what should happen to prepare the way for the Lord. He was doing John the Baptist's job. Who was supposed to do the John the Baptist job? The churches were. Christianity was supposed to do John the Baptist's job. The bishops, the archbishops, the Pope, Billy Graham, they were supposed to do it. We were supposed to do it. But nobody did it. So Father had to do it. And that's what Yankee Stadium and Washington Monument were. They were to show that what America should do. And of course, if America cleans itself up, creates good families, stops the drugs and the free sex and all of that, what is the next step? Well, you need parents. Who are the parents? The true parents. Who are the Lord? Who is the King to guide you in your daily life? Who is the model and the example? It is the Messiah. That is the next step. After you clean yourself up, the next step is to receive the Lord. After 21 months on MFT, I was called to attend UTS as a student. I was a little surprised to be called because I felt I had not yet finished the 3.5 years Father told us was the model course. I had only done 21 months. But I thought that since Father called, I should go. One outstanding thing I remember from that time was that Father, before I went to UTS, I heard about this before I went there. Father, about 1 year earlier, had suddenly went up to UTS one day. He went there every day. And one day he brought with him this big fishing net. It was about 300 meters long, about 3 meters high. But when he brought it there, it was just a bare net. It wasn't ready to be used because what he planned to do was stretch the net across the lagoon and catch the fish. When the tide went out, the fish would be caught on one side of the net and we could pick up those fish. Well, to keep the net, you have to have it stretched from the top of the water to the bottom of the lagoon, which is about 3 meters. So Father had to put floats to hold the net up, and he had to put weights to keep the bottom of the net on the bottom. And he did it all by hand, right? So this is 300 meters, and he has to put a float and a weight every 1 meter. So he's got to put 300 floats and 300 weights. And he's doing it by hand. He's using one of these fishing line, fishing sewing things. And it takes about 4 minutes to do 1 float and 1 weight. So he's got 4 minutes times 300. How many minutes is that? 1,200 minutes? How many hours is that? 20 hours. So Father is making this net. He's got 20 hours of work to do. So think about it. What does Father do? He works for 8 hours, and he says, okay, I'm all done for today. See you later. And he goes back to East Garden and relax. So you think that's what Father did? No. No. Father didn't stop. He didn't stop. He didn't stop to eat. He didn't take a break. He certainly didn't get in the car and go back to East Garden. He stayed right there. You can see pictures. You can see videos about this. The lights were on. They brought some lights, and they were shining these powerful lights so Father could see his work that he was doing out there in the evening time. So this exemplifies Father's devotion. When he starts a task, he doesn't stop until it's done, until it's finished. That really stuck with me, you know. This is something that I think if we all can pick up this trait, we can do amazing things. Really amazing things. When I was a student at UTS, he visited many times, and sometimes Mother would come. But she was so often pregnant that it was not easy for her. Father taught us how to witness. He said, don't worry, go out and stop people. You know, even you can knock over their grocery cart by accident, just to start a conversation, you know. Oh, I'm so sorry, I knocked over your, oh, well, let me help you, let me pick you up, oh, I'm so sorry, help me. And then you start talking, and then you know, well, hey, would you like to hear about this or that? Father was very, very creative on how to witness. And he said, don't have any concepts, just use your creativity. And then after that, towards the last year of my 2 years at UTS, Father was teaching about home church. And this is where, instead of waiting for people to come to you, even in the parking lot, you go to them. You find them where they are. Did anybody here join from home church? Did anybody get a visit? You did? Okay. So, you know, home church is powerful. It works. And actually, between my first and second year at UTS, Father took us all to England for the whole summer. And I met my first Iranians there, as a matter of fact. Actually, I would meet some Iranian sister a couple of years later, but there were 2 boys, 2 young men from Iran, and we stayed in the same youth hostel in London. And in fact, we went to see a movie about Muhammad together. It was quite nice. And then right after that, that was the 78, right after that the revolution came and things got all crazy. So anyway, Father took us to teach us about home church in London. How to do home church. So I went to a neighborhood in North London and I stayed with an old grandmother in one room, and I went out visiting people, and they were making me curry, and I was bringing some stuff to them, but it wasn't quite to the level that Father had in mind. He wasn't quite as successful as Father had been telling us. It was my fault. It wasn't anybody else's fault. As I said earlier, Father's goal for UTS was to be a spiritual West Point. Father wanted this to have the highest standard of character and proficiency. All right? Not only external ability, but character as well. So how can that be done? The only way we can obtain the internal character that Father expects of us is we have to hold on to the root of true parents themselves. We cannot go here and there looking for somebody else. I see many brothers and sisters that are studying about this person or that person or this teaching or that teaching, and I'm saying, what are you doing? Father's provided more material than you'll ever read in your lifetime. Why do you have to go for here and there and somewhere else? I can see for some external thing, learning how to be a doctor or a lawyer, yeah, you've got to go to school for that. But these other things, Father has provided plenty. There's so many more things I could say, but it's already so late. I don't want to keep you here too long. One last thing I want to mention is in CARP. After I graduated from UTS, Father sent us all to CARP. And at that time, the communists were very, very active on the American campuses. I ended up going to a former communist country, Lithuania, former Soviet country. There's a sister here from Lithuania. And those people, they lived under communism. They know what it was like. Americans don't know what communism is. And so all these people were going to the college campuses saying, oh, communism is a great hope in the future. Oh, communism is going to save people, help the poor, help the minorities, right? Help the Latinos, help the blacks, right? Going to help all the people, the underclass, right? That's what communism is teaching. And then what they don't tell you is how they helped. They don't tell you how they helped the Ukrainians in the 1920s. How Stalin helped the Ukrainians by starving 15 million of them. They don't tell you how Mao Zedong and his people helped some ethnic groups in China, where they killed like 50 million of them. No, they don't tell you those things. They just say, oh, communism is going to feed everybody and blah, blah, blah. So, Father sent us out to educate the students in American campuses through CART what communism really was. So I was in Washington, D.C., and at George Washington University, and one day we arrived on the campus and I saw this young communist group, about 10 young people, teenagers, and one or two leaders, elders, who were teaching them, getting them ready to go out and witness to communism. In King, were you there? Were you there in Washington? Carl? You were? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we drove on the campus one day, and I saw this group of young communists with their teachers, their leaders. So I got out and I said, I'm going to do something. So I went immediately, I went to the phone and called the police. I said, you better come quick, there's going to be a big fight here. I'm on the campus, there's going to be a big fight here. And I hung up the phone, and then I ran outside to start a fight with these communists. And it wasn't hard. We started arguing and talking. But I couldn't do it right. I really didn't have the understanding of communism properly, the proper ability to really confront these people. And guess what happened? As I was arguing with these communists, this young man came walking down the street, and he heard us arguing, and hear what we're talking about. I'm saying communism bad. And all of a sudden this guy, his ears perked up, he came over. Who was this fellow? He had been raised in East Germany all his life. He had been raised in the Soviet bloc. He had been raised under communism. He knew what communism was, personally. He had lived under it. He had suffered under it. He had seen people die from it. He had seen the starvation and the paucity and the hopelessness of the system of communism. He knew it. And this American girl was trying to say how great communism is. So he tore into her. I mean, he just, he really went into her. So they were really going at it. He was passionately, screaming at the top of his lungs, And just then, the police came. They came marching down the street. There were about 30 of them. They had horses. They had these guys with helmets and shields. It was quite amazing. So the end result was the communists were kicked off the campus and they could never return. Then, a few weeks later, I found out that CART had been kicked off the same campus a year earlier because somebody had gone to the administration. Oh, they're Moonies! Oh, the Moonies are so bad! So we got kicked off the campus for being Moonies. Well, a year later, the Moonies got the communists kicked off campus. One last story I want to tell you is, Mother, of course, is the center of our focus on this earth now. And when I was, after CART, Father started Ocean Church. Ocean Church, Father's vision for America was to keep control of the ocean. But he could see the young people were so getting involved with drugs and immorality, free sex, drinking, and just completely going to hell, that Father was really worried about the future of the ocean. Who's going to protect the ocean? Because America has a big ocean, Atlantic, Pacific, Alaska, big territory in the world. Who's going to protect this territory? So Father started Ocean Church, Ocean Challenge, and he took about 40 of us off of CART when he started us, gave us each a city, a port, and he explained 3 reasons why he started Ocean Church. 1, for the physical security of America, to guard the shore, to guard the coast of America, physically, to have somebody there who had their eyes open, and their ears open. Number 2, he said because fish is actually healthier than land meat. And he's right. You go to the health food store, you get fish oil capsules. You don't get beef oil capsules or pig oil capsules. You get fish oil capsules, right? So Father said that for health is number 2. And the 3rd reason that Father prepared us and sent us out, he said, was to reinvigorate that young person's spirit to challenge in your life the weather, the ocean. How many people have been on the ocean? Quite a few. Okay, so you know what it's like. Some days it's pretty nice. Some days it can be pretty rough. Very seldom is it smooth as glass. There's always something going on out there, and sometimes it's really rough. So, what are you going to do when you're out there? You can't go home. You're stuck. So you got to deal with it. So is that a bad thing to learn how to deal with it? Is that a bad thing for you? No, it's a good thing. You grow up. You learn how to deal with difficulties. So Father wanted us to have that experience. So okay, it's been a long time. What's my conclusion? What's my main point today? Father has set an incredible life record that he wants each and every one of us to inherit. It's not just intellectual. It's not just studying his words as an intellectual exercise or as some kind of, I'm doing my condition to go into heaven. That is not what Father expects and wants from us. He wants us to experience what he lived as well. His model course, his life course is for all of us to inherit. Right?
Take ownership.
Take ownership, exactly so. Take ownership. You don't have to do everything. You can't do it. None of us can do everything that Father did. I've tried. It doesn't. I can't do it. But we can take some part. Maybe it's the ocean. Maybe it's a college campus. Maybe it's business. Father started many businesses. Maybe it's education. Maybe it's becoming a great teacher. Maybe it's many of the other things that Father started. Spiritual things. Take something that Father has given to us, has given to you, and perfect it.
Amen.
Become the best at the best that you can be at whatever you choose from Father's teachings and example and his life course. Okay? Can you do that?
Yes.
All right, Jude. Thank you very much.